Disclaimer 1. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Do not contact or harass anyone mentioned in this video. Disclaimer 2. This video talks about crimes and activities of a violent and disturbing nature. Viewer discretion is advised. Disclaimer 3. This video should only be viewed by those 18 or older. We talk about some pretty serious subject matter, and minors should not be present for these discussions.
But I like to think of myself like the Jon Stewart of the YouTube animation community. I call things out when I feel like I can add something to the conversation.
This is the YouTuber I Love Kim Possible a Lot, also known as KP. Real name Rachel. If you've been in the Brony fandom for a while, you've probably at least heard of her. She was a big deal back in the day. However, as the fandom faded from relevance, her channel largely fell into obscurity. She tried jumping into general animation reviews like most people who survived that crash, but she never quite could stick the landing. It was a rare day that her videos climbed past 10k views. If you're not a die-hard fan, the only time that you probably heard of her this decade was last year. Courtney Pete appeared on the internet. She is the sister of the controversial and debatably human Lily Orchard. Courtney gave her personal account of everything that her sister allegedly did to her. It was a lot, and it kickstarted a new era of people looking into Lily Orchard's many controversies. Rachel made a video with Courtney appearing in it, signal boosting the Lily Orchard story. It was her most viewed video in years, and even became sort of a reference point in the Lily Orchard story. Fast forward to this year. Rachel had been hyping up a new video. A lot. Tweets and community posts galore. At first, the video seemed to be about the YouTube channel DA Games, but as the months went on, KP began saying that she had career-ruining allegations towards Saberspark. DA Games was one thing. It's a community that has many known and documented controversies. But Saberspark is another story entirely. If you're watching my channel, I know that you have at least heard of Saberspark. At present, he has 2 million subscribers and was the first cartoon channel to cross the 1 million subscriber mark. Practically speaking, he's the largest member of the cartoon community. And even more surprising for a channel of his size, with a few exceptions, he didn't really have any controversies to speak of. And most of the ones that he did have could be considered fairly minor. Things like getting into a spat with the right-wing channel Freedom Tunes. If you had news about this man, career-ruining allegations, let's just say that all eyes were on you. On May 1st of 2025, the video was released, complete with a premiere and a watch party. Unfortunately for KP, if this video killed anyone's career, it was not Saberspark's. It was her own.
Shadow the Hedgehog is a bitch-ass motherfucker! He pissed on my fucking wife! That's right! He said his dick was this big! And I said, that's disgusting! So I'm making a call-out post on my Twitter.com! Shadow the Hedgehog, you got a small fucking dick! It's the size of this walnut, but way fucking smaller!
This is a real clip in the real video. The entire thing is filled with nostalgia critic type sketch comedy, lingering jokes, bad pacing, and even technical errors. Some of the censorship in it is very poorly done. Like, you can easily make out all of the details of a dick pic that Rachel quote-unquote censored. I'm not showing it at all for what I hope are obvious reasons. But the video itself has been archived and preserved and re-uploaded on many channels. So if you are really curious, you can see it for yourself. Just know what you're getting into. What was hyped up to be about Saberspark barely ended up being about him at all. In the end, the video wasn't even really about DA Games. The crux of the video was about Rachel's conflict with a former editor of hers named Aficionados Chris, who had worked for her a decade prior, and now works with Saberspark and DA Games. And even though Saberspark was largely treated as an afterthought, one moment of the Saberspark segment in the video is what got everyone talking about it. Rachel has an anonymous testimony accusing Saberspark of sexual assault on 2 separate occasions. And it comes out of nowhere in the context of the video. Like, it's in there with the structural integrity of a rickroll. So what we have here is a video where the largest member of the community is accused of some of the worst crimes possible after a slog of Seinfeld jokes and, this.
It looks like 2 balls and a bong! He fucked my wife! Guess what? I'm gonna fuck Leah! That's right! That's what you get! My super laser piss!
People were upset. People still are upset. There were CSA survivors in the premiere chat who complained about the video proper, but they ended up getting berated by Courtney Pete, who was featured extensively in the video. The backlash was swift and immense, and to some extent, still ongoing. even almost a month later. The video was unlisted and then privated within hours. And while it was preserved, the video itself had several assets in the description: the Google document version of the accuser's statement against Saberspark, and the initial call with Chris that started this whole thing. These simply disappeared for a time because cutting off the video was immediate priority. People tried to preserve the description, but the links to these things were broken because they were so long. I was able to find them, but they had to be collected through roundabout means. The video certainly made a splash, and everyone wanted to know, what the hell is going on here? When it comes to Saberspark, there are only two real possibilities. Either it happened or it didn't. And all Rachel provided for evidence, in the video at least, was a twit longer that, fun fact, got one of the dates wrong. The two incidents are both alleged to have happened in 2012, not 2013. If this did happen, Rachel presented the worst case imaginable, and very few people were publicly believing the alleged victim. And if it didn't happen, I can't imagine a more effective strategy to speedrunning becoming a community pariah. As the saying goes, if you take a shot at the king, you best not miss. And this is why. One of the most frustrating things about Saberspark as a content creator is that he never seems to address anything. Talking about even his remotest controversies seems to be banned on all of his socials. And anytime you comment about even something small, like his Twitter likes, it gets quickly removed. It would have to be an extreme controversy to get him to make a response, which Saberspark did on the 12th of May, simply called Response. When I first watched Rachel's video, I was very confused, and then as it sat with me, I got angry, and then I decided to get involved. I am mostly detached from the situation. DA Games and their community hurt one of my friends, and they were very upset with the video in general. Rachel has also not been the best to a couple of my other friends. Lazy Bedhead was also in the video, and while she did have more context than some of the others who were put in the video, few people had the full context to what was being released. But as far as being involved in the original situation, I'm not. I don't know KP. I don't know Saberspark. Well, I know of them. I don't know them personally. And I don't have a horse in this race either way. But someone has to do due diligence. And considering some of the background events that have happened during the month of May, I'm kind of worried about how this is progressing. Either way, I want to get to the truth of the matter here as best I can. As usual, I have the help of a team. I will be upfront this time though. We're not going to have all of the answers. I'm not going to hand down a definitive verdict. The crux of the situation happened in 2012. There are always going to be unknowns with a time gap of more than a decade. This is not a Phoenix Wright game where there's a smoking gun that definitively points to a target. This is real life where things are alleged to have happened in a hotel room with no cameras and no witnesses. And in the real world, when people are traumatized, sometimes the last thing people think of is proving that it happened at all. Here is what I will promise you. I will give you everything that you need to know to form a more informed opinion on Saberspark, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and the allegation in question, trying best to remove it from the context of this clusterfuck. Speaking of that, one of the more immediate mistakes that KP made was trying to cover both DA Games and Saberspark in the same video. The only through line between the two was their mutual editor Chris. But the situations and scenarios are very different. I am personally focused on Saberspark in this video. DA Games controversies are much better documented, there is a Google Doc about them, and a lot more people are outwardly speaking out on that issue, but they will not be my focus for this video. And please pardon the more minimal editing in this investigation video. I'm not doing the whole Danganronpa thing again. That was hell in the editing bay. Chapter 1, the beginning of the end. I believe that the best way to tackle this case in particular is to start with the fallout and work our way back to the video proper. After all, the video in question isn't where the story ended. Honestly, it's somewhere in the middle. By doing this, we may have a definitive answer to, how did this even happen? Saberspark's response on the 12th was a strange one, mainly due to the fact that it exists at all. The man does not like speaking on controversies. Small, big, any of them. He makes the fans of Freedom Tunes angry, he just quietly removes that segment from the video and never talks about it again. And while sexual assault allegations are definitely much more serious than a YouTube feud, very few people seem to be going to bat for these allegations. There was KP, obviously, and the Brony Fandom account who brought the allegations to light. For reference, Brony Fandom is a shared Twitter account by two individuals, Bonk and Sophie. At least it was shared at the time the video came out. Sophie has since changed the password for a reason that we will get to. That account exists largely to signal boost the allegations and controversies towards someone called Black Griffin. Because that story is tangentially related to Saberspark, the accuser was sent to Brony Fandom by a friend named Amy. Neither of the BronyFandom users were able to help immediately, but they heard that KP was making a video involving Saberspark, so the accuser was sent in that direction. Even after the video and after the backlash, the BronyFandom account stood by the accuser. They also signal boosted other people who claim to support the accuser's story, Amy and Jessa. Of course, none of these are very public individuals, and the most public of them all, KP, dealt with a much more public backlash than Saberspark. A good deal of the general public was very skeptical of the allegations, which they probably should be. KP provided no hard evidence that this actually happened. Others, however, crossed the line into legitimate harassment of the accusers, which you should not do. Even if you believe that these are liars with a vendetta, harassment does not benefit anyone. The general consensus on the internet at this point, though, is that allegations with no evidence does not have to be addressed at all. Because could you imagine if we were stepping up with everything that every rando says about us? As you might imagine, crazy people saying things about people is a very real thing that happens. A lot. More than you might initially expect. A good deal of the people commenting on this seem to believe that Saberspark had no real reason to respond at all. Maybe I'm painting things as more black and white than they really were, because a lot of people did jump on the allegations, and many people did unsubscribe from Saberspark's channel, as he pointed out in his response video. Whatever the reason, it exists, let's take a look at it. It's one of the very few times that he's been live on camera on his channel, a camera that he does not seem to know how to use properly. Is this like a fisheye lens, a wide angle for a close-up shot? The framing is very bad. Anyway, this is largely standard for a YouTube addressing controversy video. And keep in mind when I say that, standard is bad. At the very least, it's not a ukulele video. I can assume that he showed it to a lawyer before putting it up. With the most major allegation, Saberspark simply says that it didn't happen.
To be clear, the accusation that I sexually assaulted someone is completely false. And I feel disgusted that I even have to say that. I've had sexual partners before in the past, but we have always abided by enthusiastic and reciprocated consent.
Which, fair enough, KP and company didn't provide any evidence themselves. But the video goes on and on like it's KP and BronyFandom directly making this claim entirely on their own. Like, if anyone made up this claim, it was those two making it up. Like, the accuser doesn't exist as a person at all. Which they are. They are a real person who is not KP or either of the users of the BronyFandom account. I want to be clear about that immediately. In my own personal opinion, the response video was focused on one thing and one thing only.
Slug Entertainment's interview with her seems to demonstrate her malicious intent. And from the context of her video, it looks like it was done with a desire to use this drama to boost her channel's popularity.
In order to sue someone for defamation when you're a public figure, the defamatory statement must be false, must have caused actual damages, and here's the kicker which makes it really hard to sue someone for defamation when you're a public individual. You have to prove actual malice, or barring that, a damaging level of negligence. Saberspark's response video seems to set up that case, sometimes going as far as just straddling the line like it's an outright checklist. Of course, the video does other minor things as well.
They seem to see themselves as judge, jury, and executioner, and launch vicious harassment campaigns against multiple online creators, such as Billy Bustup, Prince Whateverer, and Black Griffin.
So, the tweet that Saberspark points to, for example, of BronyFandom harassing Black Griffin, is a link to a Google document. Now, Bonk, one of the users of the BronyFandom account, does not claim to have written the document. As far as I can tell, the BronyFandom account is only a contributor. There were multiple contributors. If you believe them or not, that's up to you. But if you've noticed Bonk's pattern of writing, or even Sophie's pattern of writing on Twitter or other locations, you could probably easily see the difference in terms of writing. So, am I harassing DA Games by putting the Google document against them that was not written by me in my description? I'm not saying that Bonk does not harass Black Griffin, because he does have a reputation of harassing people. I'm saying that linking to a Google document not written by him does not constitute harassment.
BronyFandom has on multiple occasions used falsifiable information to attack people with.
Okay, this might be a nitpick, but I think that it's important to bring up because both KP and Saberspark have misused this word, and it is possible to misuse this word to try and pull a fast one. False is not a synonym of falsifiable. False means that something is not true. Falsifiable means that it can be proven false, technically speaking. That doesn't mean that it will be. Every statement of fact, by definition, is falsifiable. The sky is blue is a falsifiable statement. If the sky is not blue, the statement has been falsified. False and falsifiable do not mean the same thing. Saying falsifiable can mean that the audience hears the word false when the statement may not be false at all. I want to be clear, I'm not saying that Saberspark or even KP was intentionally doing this. It may have been a legitimate mistake.
According to KP's post, Bernie Fandom was in her Discord server, and according to this person, they were allegedly friends.
According to Damien Wolf, Damien in the Dark, the smoking gun. Twitter rando says they're besties. This is our standard of evidence, okay.
I have been on Twitter since 2012, but in early 2020, I noticed that the culture of the website had begun to change. It was more combative and antagonistic.
The Justine Sacco controversy happened in 2013.
And the website started to reward that kind of engagement.
Yeah, in like 2015. You were late to the party, is what I'm saying. By the way, Blue Sky will join that party before too long. That kind of behavior is baked into the format of short-form blogging. It's inevitable.
These aren't individuals who care about the well-being of victims, but only engagement and exploitative content.
So, funny story. This is not the first draft of this video. I wrote a first draft where I was a whole lot harsher and quite mean, to KP especially. It is very easy to assume that she made her video based on a vendetta against Saberspark. I will even state that it's probably the easiest conclusion that you can come to. And the things that she has done after the release of the video, which we will talk about, don't give her the best look. But we don't really know her full intentions. We can make speculations, but we probably shouldn't do that. As for Brony Fandom, Bonk specifically, after the video got immense backlash, he did throw KP under the bus. However, at no point did he ever state that the accuser was lying. He didn't even shield his language with allegedly, and he got into fights with people who didn't outright believe the accuser. On top of that, Bonk is clearly mentally unwell. I don't really think we can know his full intentions.
In regards to my channel, we have lost nearly tens of thousands of subscribers since the release of their video.
According to Social Blade, Saberspark started losing subscribers on April 28th, days before the actual video came out. Look at the very screenshot that he shows. You see those bumps before the first? Those are all dips below 0. Saberspark was losing subscribers before KP's video came out. Not as many, but there was still subscriber loss. It might be a little bit harder than that for him to prove damages in court. I'm not a lawyer, I'm just saying. Especially since loss of subscribers isn't the same thing as financial harm, with how YouTube itself keeps de-emphasizing subscribers as an important metric. And let's not forget something very important. Saberspark himself put retirement on the horizon in the month of April. That is going to lead to subscriber loss by default. You would also have to detach that subscriber loss from other factors, which may be a little bit harder to do than Saberspark expects. Like I said, this whole thing reads as the first step in a lawsuit, and it is my personal belief that Saberspark will at least attempt to sue Brony Fandom and KP. The obvious question is, can he? Well, I mean, in the United States, you can generally sue anyone for anything. You could take your grandmother to small claims court because she got you the wrong McDonald's order. The better question is, can he win? Once again, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that it'd be hard to argue damages, due to Saberspark's other controversies, and the fact that KP's video is almost universally reviled. Brony Fandom and Rachel don't exactly have a good reputation at the moment. And I believe that anyone primed to believe the worst in Saberspark because of such a spectacle probably would have came to that conclusion via other means. And if we're talking reputation, it would probably be a bad idea to go after Bonk specifically. I don't know how to put this delicately, but the man has problems. After a bunch of background stuff and harassment, Bonk appeared to stream an attempt on his own life. First on Twitch, but when the Twitch account got banned, he tried doing it again on Twitter. He did not succeed, he was found beforehand, and according to Sophie, he was checked into a hospital afterwards. A lot of people suspect that this was a stunt, that it was, faked. In my own personal opinion, the distinction is irrelevant, because whether you're seriously doing it, or you're only pretending to do it, neither of which showcases a very healthy mindset. As for KP, I will say that if a lawsuit is on the table, she is making some of the worst possible decisions in the aftermath of the video. I can see the temptation to go on interviews and get your side of the story out there, but I cannot possibly fathom any reason why Rachel would go on an interview with Slug Entertainment, also known as Angry Slug. For those who don't know who that is, that's the former editor of Mama Max. Yes, Predator Hunter Mama Max. the one who was canceled last year for turning real-world cases into a Hotline Miami ARG, among other things. He has about 7,000 subscribers. Why would you even do this? What's your angle? Going on an interview at all when defamation is on the table is a bad idea, as Carl Jobst learned the hard way with his case against Billy Mitchell. Also, outright threatening the accuser is not a good look either.
Okay, Emmy, I'll be honest. From my understanding, you shared a Dropbox file with Lazy, and your fucking name was on it. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's direct confirmation. So I'm at the point where my reputation is on the line because of you. And I feel like an idiot because of you. And you can help me clean up this mess and get in a call and tell your side of the story, or this is going to blow up in your face. Because people have already figured out it's you based on that mistake. And I'm fucking tired, because the things that have been pointed out to me is that you have your own platform. You know, people, you knew going in that people were going to figure it out. Maybe not this quickly, maybe not by your own mistake, but they did. And you can be an adult and help me clean up this mess, or you can be a coward. I'm not yelling at you. I'm not telling you what to do. But you've put people that are in the video in a very difficult and dangerous position. And I don't think you really understand that. And so I'm at the point where I talked to this guy Beckett, and he says that you have the chance right now to tell your side of the story in a call with me or with Lazy or with him or with someone, or people are going to villainize you. And that's where we're at. And none of like the things that have been pointed out to me doesn't make any sense. The timeline is questionable. The only people that vouched for you were Brony and Amy and Sophie, and Amy won't even fucking talk to me. So I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm being real with you. It's fucked. You're fucked one way or the other. So make a decision soon, or I will publicly confirm it was you. You have 24 hours.
If I had to guess, and this is only a guess, if Saberspark tries to sue anyone, I'd imagine the strategy would be to get them to settle out of court. Because KP does have one major defense. KP's major claim is that Saberspark didn't fire aficionados Chris, despite having every reason to. And as far as I'm aware, Chris is still on Saberspark's team. There is the sexual assault allegation. That is the most damaging of all the statements. But that allegation did not originate from either KP or Bonk or Sophie. When the allegation does come from an actual person that actually exists. Let's talk about them. Chapter 2. Old Friends, New Enemies. Saberspark was not the first person from his camp to make a comment about the situation. This is Casey. She is Saberspark's editor's wife, and she posted a tweet longer on the 7th of May. Whatever was going on behind the scenes, these two seem to be operating at entirely different frequencies, because it's a completely different attitude than Saberspark's response. Keep in mind that this is to I Love Kim Possible a lot, and not to or about the accuser directly. A lot of this does read as pointless drama and insider information. I will say that the phrase Cool Kids Club comes up a lot in other places, not good places, like places where the C's are replaced to K because that's the quote-unquote joke. It's a phrase that you shouldn't use. Speaking of phrasing, she was also asked about Black Griffin, to which she wrote this. The phrase my truth is also something that you should never ever say. At best, it makes you sound willfully delusional. There is no quote-unquote my truth. There is only the truth. Now, this statement here. At the time that this was written, KP may have removed the video, but she did not publicly recant the allegation. Her tweet the following day called Saberspark's accuser a victim without shielding the language with allegedly. The only thing that I found that could be considered close to a recantation was KP's voice message to the accuser, which was said in private and made afterwards. But beyond that, Casey says some fairly egregious things about the accuser. She states that the accuser has victims, that the accuser committed a crime in her own guest room, and a simple Google search of quote-unquote her name drama could have told you everything that she has done that is of public knowledge. Of course, Casey never reveals what that name is, and that's one of the biggest mysteries of the whole ordeal. Like, if you really think that this person did X, Y, and Z, and you're clearly not caring about the consequences here, since I doubt Saberspark wanted a statement like this public, why not just out the person? The most logical answer is that this is all made up and Casey is talking out of her ass, but no, the accuser also claims that she used to know Casey, know her enough to go to Disney together in 2014. And for the record, no one I've spoken to seems to know the context of the alleged crime in the guest room either. I could speculate as to why Casey didn't just out the accuser outright, but we're probably never going to know the real reason. What I do know is that this seemed to be the impetus of people looking further into the accuser who wanted to stay anonymous. BronyFandon't signal boosted every single person who publicly said that they knew the accuser and defended their story. Redditors used this to see who they were all mutually following. Then they went into the past, looking at tweets of not just Saberspark, but who they thought was the dead ringer. And then they created a Google document and released it publicly. I want to be clear, no one on my investigation team had anything to do with this, at least unless someone went behind my back, and I trust all of these guys with my life, so I'm saying that they didn't do it. I also do not think that it was KP or anyone assisting her, because KP knew at least the name of this person from the very beginning. My team and I were speaking to the accuser's alt, first through Twitter and then through Discord. And the first question that I ever asked them was, what questions shouldn't I ask? And the only thing I wasn't allowed to ask was about their identity, and so I didn't. Of course, being anonymous is more than just not saying your name. It's actually a lot more difficult than you might think. The accuser gave us her first name, Emily, and a bunch of other small pieces of information that couldn't be used to directly identify them out of context. However, there was a vlog clip that was too big to send via Discord, so they used a Dropbox. And that Dropbox had their last name on it. Now, this person has a common first and last name, so it could have just been a coincidence. But we had our speculation, and the other seemingly irrelevant details all proved accurate to who this person was speculated to be. I will state up front, I was given express permission to reveal who this person was. And I was given this permission after KP threatened them, after Bonk's apparent breakdown, as well as me having questions with their overall testimony. So, we'll talk about them so we're all on the same page. So, as many people speculated, the person in question is Emily Jones, also known as Emu Emmy. If that name sounds familiar, it's because she's been on the platform longer than I have. She's an influencer with over 100,000 subscribers, prominent in the My Little Pony community, obviously, and later the Sonic community. She's mostly known for singing, voice acting, and Sonic and Tails R. It was a bit of a revelation to me that I was actually familiar with some of her work. When we found out who she was, we decided to do a background check, and Lazy Bedhead spent like 2 days looking up who she was. There is plenty of information about Emu Emmy online, and one thing that both Lazy and KP found was a video documentary here that talked about a whole wide array of things. There was also, ironically enough, a Google Dropbox with more information. The information does paint her as crazy, like over-the-top crazy, from small things like working with Animated James or Mondo Pony before their constellations, to much more out-there events, like having an affair with Ryan Drummond, voice of Sonic in several games, not paying Mike Pollock, voice of Eggman, for voice acting work, and a long-standing feud with a brain cancer survivor named Lizzie. It was roughly at this time, KP also seemed to be doing research into who this person actually was. This was in spite of her not talking to an alt the entire time, and actually talking with the Emu Emmy Discord account from the very beginning. To make sure that KP was on the same page with us, we did have several calls with her. We tried to keep her in the loop. The threat that leaked out probably proves that that wasn't the smartest decision on our end. By the way, if Emily is to be believed, Bonk released that without even her permission. As you probably already noticed, a big issue behind the scenes was that everyone seemed to be acting incredibly irrationally, acting on impulse, or not really thinking through their actions. It was enough trying to get to the bottom of things without someone doing something incredibly inadvisable every other day. My team and I had 3 separate talks with Emily, directly about her own controversies. The first was with Lazy Bedhead alone. The second was with her, myself, and Phineas. We wanted to get her side of the story on her controversies. Just us figuring out what the hell was going on, and as the discussion went on, she provided plenty of receipts. it would take an Atlas effort to verify each and every single one of them. But some of them did hold up to immediate scrutiny. Mike Pollock, for instance, wrote a full-on message about his part in this story. The third conversation was a full-on interview, for all of your viewing pleasure, which I will link in the description. If you want to hear Emily's side of the story directly on any and all of her controversies that we know of, go ahead. I do think that it's important for you to see that, but that discussion is 3.5 hours long on something that's technically only tangentially related to the matters at hand. To be as forward as I can, most of the interview is directly about the things that Emily Jones herself has been accused of from various, I'll be quite frank, unsavory places. That's the first 2.5 hours of the interview. It's timestamped, so if you have a specific question or issue, you can go to the specific timestamp. The last hour of that interview is about some of the more basic questions that everyone was asking Emily. Why now of all times? Why go to KP specifically? What's your thoughts on Saber Sparks' response video? So on. And hearing Emily talk about those in her own words. Now, I want to be as fair as I possibly can. I'll put everything on the table. The goal during these interviews wasn't to question or push back on Emily's statements. And so we didn't. We did that in text and behind the scenes, but not while on the record. We did have a sit-down discussion with her about her own controversies. And I mean, to be fair, speaking about pushing back on Emily's statements in this interview, it's like, what am I supposed to say? Emily was talking about her personal experiences. Like, I could say that it's trying to bait sympathy, but I'm not interested in doing that. That's up to your own interpretation. Saber Sparks' response was very fact-oriented, and facts can be very easily critiqued. And it's not like I'm letting Emily's statements go through unfiltered and unfocused, because I am going to have plenty of things to say about the written testimony, the initial allegation. But I will state up front, I am interested in being as fair as possible to all parties involved. And I will state that I did pick apart Saber Sparks' response video on the matter. You've already seen that. And during this interview, I don't critique or interject or anything like that. So I would keep that in mind, and I would recommend watching Emily's statements with just as much a grain of salt as I had watching Saber Sparks. If something sounds strange or odd, remember that it's fair to feel that way. Do your own research in the end if something does feel strange or odd. Remember, even though I have a team, our collective knowledge can be surprisingly limited at times. We have at least 2 members whose entire life is Sonic, and yet at the same time, they had never even heard of Emily Jones, who is allegedly infamous within the Sonic community. The goal here is to give all parties a fair shake. Emily, Saberspark, everyone. And I expect all of you to want to do the same. For the sake of argument, let's pretend that she was bullshitting all of us for 7 hours, and that everything in every dubious documentary is gold standard truth. Terrible things can happen to terrible people. Crazy shit can happen to crazy people. Of course, when terrible or crazy people tell us stories, we should take them with mountains of salt. But controversies alone do not mean that the allegation couldn't have happened. However, it would be irresponsible of me to not mention that many of the controversies, true or not, are sex scandals. Maybe I'm naive, but in the direct discussions that I've had with Emily on voice call, she sounded genuine. And for what it's worth, this is not the first time that she's told the story about Saberspark. She was able to dig up some messages from years and years ago. Unfortunately, much of the digital data of conversations between Saberspark and Emily, real or not, have been lost to the turn of time. Cell phone and computers were upgraded several times, and most of the discussions allegedly happened on Skype. Skype officially died on May 5th of this year, 4 days after KP's video initially aired. Some people speculate that this timing is meaningful. It's not. The truth of the matter is that Emily came to KP in late March, a month before Skype was fully deleted. Not that that matters either, since Skype didn't save user-side data prior to 2018. If you didn't have access to the computer where all those messages originated from, you didn't have access to those messages at all. Of course, with what we know now, there are a couple of legitimate questions that do arrive. Why now? And if you have a platform, well, why not do this on your own? After all, Emily's platform is much bigger than KP's. Due to the fact that she's worked directly with Sega and actual established voice actors, you could argue that on some level she's actually more successful than Saberspark. I can't really answer that question. As for why be anonymous, the reason claimed is that Emily was afraid of Saberspark's fans and would be afraid of them attacking her. I will say up front, Saberspark has a reputation for a few things, but sending his fans to attack people is not one of them. The only thing that comes close is when Saberspark made a harsh and, to be honest, bad critique of Freedom Tunes, but that backfired horrendously on him. The example that Emily gave when directly asked was this Twitter exchange between Saberspark and KP, the one that KP put in her own video. This is a bad example. Here is how Twitter works if you don't know. Even if you're following someone, you are not sent Twitter replies. You have to go out of your way and specifically seek them out. And if you're not following them at all, as Emily wasn't, the chances of coming across this is slim. It should be noted that one of the things that Emily is accused of is sending her fan base to harass people. Even if that's false, any big YouTuber probably knows that their fan base has a propensity to harass people. I know that my fan base has done this in the past. You can probably get away with calling this projection, or you could also get away with calling this a fear based on experience. Even through an anonymous account, Emily did get harassment. And let's not forget that in some circles, Emily's reputation does precede her. Even though I don't have a horse in this race, do you think that I'm not personally worried that this whole excursion could go very, very wrong? I'm talking about serious allegations against the biggest guy in the community, coming from another established personality who is arguably even more successful. And both of them are at least accused of having very rabid fan bases. This isn't how you network is what I'm saying. But now that we're all on the same page, let's actually analyze the allegations in question. Chapter 3. The first incident. Canterlot Gardens, late September 2012. In terms of transparency, I am going to pull the allegations directly from the original KB video. Then afterwards, I'll throw in some updated and more specific information that the accuser later added. It is also worth noting that there are a couple of different versions of this immediately. The one in the video is not identical that was released on the Brony Fandom Twitter and Blue Sky. With that being said, let's give all the parties the benefit of the doubt while we can. I will be calling the separate alleged crimes Incidents 1 and 2 for simplicity's sake. Incident 1 is said to have taken place in late September during Canterlot Gardens in Strongville, Ohio. Incident 2 was first said to have taken place in 2013, but was later corrected to EQLA 2012 in Anaheim, California. I get that changing information at all can be taken as a sign that something is amiss. But once again, let's give the benefit of the doubt while we can, keeping in mind that all of this allegedly took place over 10 years ago. Speaking of which, I must all remind you that these are allegations, and all parties should be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
I became a fan of Saberspark when I was in high school when I found his essay titled Ballad of the Brony in 2011. After graduating and turning 18, I added him on Skype to tell him I was a big fan of his. He added me back almost instantly, and we had a conversation ending with him giving me his phone number, which was a really big deal to me at the time since this was the first time interacting with any sort of celebrity. I had developed a parasocial crush on him due to being starstruck, which was something he was aware of. We would talk on Skype and text each other semi-frequently leading up to the first time meeting him. In 2012, I went to my first pony convention. This was my first time ever traveling by myself and was soon after the two of us became friends. When I met up with him in person, he invited me to his hotel room and he showed me the video he was editing on his laptop, causing me to internally geek out. I was really nervous being alone in a hotel with someone I was a huge fan of and had a crush on, but I tried to play it cool. He was 4 to 5 years older than me, making me feel more nervous and out of place. He would bring up the prospects of the two of us dating and how it didn't feel right for us to do so. After that, he almost immediately initiated making out with me and guided me to his bed. In this moment, he did not directly ask me for consent. I was thrown onto his bed and he would insert himself into me. Saberspark was also significantly larger than me, as I was an 80-something pound 18-year-old girl, so I physically could not stop him. I felt extremely nervous and uncomfortable because I had never experienced having any sort of sexual intimacy with someone I was not dating before, much less someone I just met. I was very new to meeting people online in general. At that moment, I laid there dissociating as I felt very wrong while trying to rationalize it in my head to convince myself it was a safe and normal encounter. He rushed off to clean and finish himself and came back to the bed and offered me a handshake saying, "Friends?" This would cause me for the rest of the event to feel that I was taken advantage of and ashamed of myself for not trying to stop the interaction. Though I tried pretending I was fine to everyone around me, I was, and still am, demisexual, and being put in that position was not something I wanted.
This concludes the accuser's statement of Incident 1. Before we continue, we need to discuss how these allegations were made. They were put together and constructed on Discord before they made it into the video, Twitter, and the Google document. KP and Courtney Pete gave direct feedback to the accuser. A lot of this is innocuous, asking for clarifying details, editing for flow, but there was a segment that they thought should have been removed entirely. The issue of implied consent, and even giving Saberspark the benefit of the doubt that there was a possibility Saberspark felt that consent was implied. Courtney and Rachel recommended that part be removed, considering that Rachel thinks the idea of implied consent is quote-unquote kind of BS. As you might remember, the entire video has a whole segment on implied consent. More on this later. I'll be blunt, we won't be talking about Incident 1 very much. It was a smaller convention in general, and doesn't seem to have been well documented. The only footage that we can find was of panels and interviews, things that would have gone around in fandom circuits at the time. Here's what we can prove. Both Saberspark and Emily were at this convention, at least on the 27th. Saberspark shared a hotel room with at least Paleosteno, a frequent collaborator. Saberspark was also doing coverage at times. Emily and Saberspark have a Twitter interaction late in the morning. At some point, he hosts a panel with Everfree Radio and tweets about it later that night. The sexual assault is alleged to have happened on this day, and there is a ton of time that's not accounted for. But that just means that it's technically possible to have happened. Just because time is unaccounted for doesn't mean that it did happen. On day 3 of this convention, Saberspark tweeted about dining with the Creepers, Mondo Pony, and the Everfree Radio staff. After the incident, the accuser alleges trying to go to the room they were supposed to be staying at. However, they were staying with a couple, but there was allegedly a domestic violence incident, so they felt the need to leave. This incident doesn't seem to have been reported to the police. At the very least, it doesn't seem to have been in fandom news or local news of the area. It is also worth noting that no police were ever contacted in regards to any of the alleged crimes at any point. That being said, it is worth noting that Brony fan conventions had notoriously bad security. Toon Critic, an infamous former analyst who had been accused of engaging in erotic roleplay with a minor for over a year, among other crimes, was allegedly able to get away with a lot of his shady behavior in plain sight at many of these conventions. As late as 2019, when people should have been on much higher alert, a security staff at a Brony convention was even outed as a predator. Emily attests to having circled around the outside of the hotel on a Skype call with their best friend and wanting to come home. They didn't because they alleged having very strict parents, and didn't want to be banned from cons forever. After this, according to them, they remained in the lobby for the rest of the night, remembering even sleeping there. Emily did post a picture of the convention the next day. It should be noted that Emily posted to social media at both events after the incidents were said to have happened. But that's really what we have for hard data here and full-on testimony. Let's go over some of the more inference-based things. In the testimony, quote-unquote, the first time interacting with any sort of celebrity is technically inaccurate. Emily has been on Dr. Phil in an episode that was aired in 2011. Now, I can easily see why Dr. Phil would not be immediately thought of as a celebrity, and if you ask many people, especially young people who have been on Dr. Phil, they describe it as particularly traumatic. The Dr. Phil experience is a whole wormhole of controversies in and of itself that we don't have time to get into. He is a man accused of not having a therapy license, and yet acting like one on TV, focusing more on entertainment than the health of the people he interacts with. But he is, by definition, a celebrity. The other odd thing here is being starstruck. Emily also repeatedly claimed that Saberspark kept saying that the two of them even dating would be wrong. So let's talk about where Saberspark stood in 2012. He was not the super mega ultra YouTuber that he is now. He didn't have 2 million subscribers at least. Even in the Brony analyst circuit, he was not at the top of the hill. I would have thought about DigiBrony, Josh Scorcher, honestly even his longtime friend Paleosteno, before I thought of Saberspark. That being said, Saberspark was not a no one at the time either. I mentioned Everfree Radio a couple of times already. Paleosteno and Saberspark were a part of this collective, and had associations with Dusty Cat and AC Racebest. AC created Bronies React, which was incredibly successful in its heyday, so Saberspark wasn't a no one. I mean, he was a part of this whole panel in Canterlot Gardens. It is also worth mentioning that Brony fame, or horse fame as it was called, worked a little bit differently than general internet whatevers. People did flock to even smaller individuals, and it didn't take a lot to get wildly successful within the community. I myself practically did Wikipedia-style recaps of episodes, and even I got a degree of horse fame. On the other hand, we have to consider the time period. This allegedly took place in 2012, and in the previous 13 years, our cultural attitudes have changed a lot. These days, there's a ton of argument and debate about when it's okay for any kind of celebrity or even a YouTuber to do things with their fans, date them, engage in sexual behavior, so on. Back in 2012, it would have been at least strange for Saberspark to be concerned about power dynamics. This discussion really became mainstream in the wake of Me Too later in the decade. In 2012, with very few exceptions, being a YouTuber wasn't even a real job to the wider public. To be fair, Emily says that it wasn't her saying it would have been wrong for the two of them to date. It was allegedly Saberspark saying this. So I did ask for alternative theories. We considered the fact that maybe it was an affair, but it didn't seem like Saberspark was dating anyone at the time. At the very least, we couldn't find any information that he was. Emily herself suggested that maybe it was because of the age gap, but at no point was she ever accusing that Saberspark thought that she was under the age of 18 or anything like that. Saberspark was 24 at the time and she was 18, and that is a significant age gap. But once again, considering the time period, I don't know how taboo anyone would have felt dating an 18-year-old just in general. I am also aware that a lot of people speculate that Emily might be bitter that a previous relationship didn't work out, and that might be why she's doing this. The testimonies themselves do delve into a lot of a parasocial crush, and the possibility that she wishes things turned out differently than they did. By her own admission, she believes that consent may have been implied because of said crush. Now, people can be sexually assaulted by someone that they have a crush on. They can be taken to a place that they are not comfortable with. And I will also state this, because I think this is relevant to this argument. Emily currently has a partner that she does seem very comfortable with. That doesn't make this point of view impossible, I just personally think it makes it less likely. No matter which way you slice Incident 1, it's going to be a he said, she said story. It allegedly took place in a hotel room with no witnesses. And while there are certainly things that you can question, certain statements that sound odd, there are no outward contradictions. And one of those questions that we should probably nip in the bud immediately is, why don't you just go to the police? After 2020, I think that some people do understand the view of being hesitant to go to the police a little bit more. But to start with, some people are just very uncomfortable with police officers in general, and in many cases justifiably so. But the best way I can describe it is like this. After something traumatic happens, the last thing on many people's minds is trying to prove it. And sometimes, even in the instant, you can't prove it. If someone runs over your dog, would your first inclination be to try and write down the license plate number of the car that hit it? That being said, going to the police after something terrible happens is, generally speaking, the correct course of action. To be forward with you, if this is where the story ended, I probably wouldn't be making this video at all. There's not much a YouTuber can do with a he said, she said story that's not their own. At the very least, it's a very big risk to handle at all. But the big issue is that people are going to have their own immediate biases, and you can't really shake them away. You know, you've got the believe all victims crowd versus the I want to see the goddamn footage before I believe you crowd. But we do have one more incident to look over, and luckily for us, there's actually more stuff to look over with that one. Chapter 4. The second incident. Early November, EQLA 2012. Once again, I'm going to be pulling the allegation directly from the KP video. I will state ahead of time, once again, the date in the original allegation is wrong. Emily later updated this to have occurred at the very start of November in 2012. I will also state again that these are allegations, and all parties are to be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
I maintained the friendship until a second occurrence happening at a completely different PonyCon in 2013. This time we met in a public space, but had no one around and talked for a while. He kept bringing up the prospects of us starting a relationship, but how it felt wrong. He would grab my hand saying how it felt so right, only to push my hand away saying, but so wrong. I had decided that my crush on him was something I needed to get over because I felt that my emotions were being toyed with. He then suggested going to a more public space around others, and we went into the elevator to go up to the lobby of the PonyCon hotel. As soon as the door closed, Saberspark forcefully shoved me against the wall and shoved his tongue down my throat. It scared me and actually hurt, triggering another attack of dissociation. Once again, he did not ask for consent when throwing me into this situation. Once the doors opened and people were present, this led me to feel very embarrassed. He got off me and took my hand and guided me towards the stairs to go back down to where we just were and into a men's restroom where he pulled his pants down and guided my hands and head to perform oral sex on him. I was afraid of denying him because of past experiences with sexual assault, so I did it to get it over with without wanting to cause a problem, where he would ejaculate on my face, apologize profusely, and then offer the same handshake as he did at the con I initially met him, saying, "Friends?" Despite pretending I was fine, I had slowly begun pulling away from Saberspark. I cried that night while staying with a friend, but waited for that friend to fall asleep so no one could hear me, and I would cry for months, feeling ashamed of myself for putting myself in a compromising situation with someone I hardly knew. I had always felt taken advantage of by him, and tried being friendly and pretending nothing was wrong because it was all I knew how to do. I would blame myself for the interactions for years, only opening up to a few close people, questioning if consent was implied because of my crush, and unwillingness and fear to outright stop the advances because of how uncomfortable I felt. I understand that there is a possibility that he felt consent was implied because he knew I had a crush on him. However, he did not once ask for consent directly and was instead thrown into these sexual encounters, usually very suddenly. There were no discussions about the power dynamic between us as a popular content creator and a fan at any time. And my parasocial connection to him and not wanting someone I was a fan of to hate me if I rejected him, leaving me afraid to stop his advances. Over time, I grew increasingly distant and would eventually end contact completely. I don't feel safe enough to fully come forward because I don't want his fans and friends or even him to harass or contact me publicly. I wish to stay anonymous so I can avoid the anxiety and stress of being targeted by either him, his friends, and especially his fans, as Saberspark has over 2 million subscribers, and even sharing my story at all has me feeling really afraid. I have seen other instances of Saberspark using his enormous platform to confront people online he has had conflict with. I have also witnessed several instances of his friends attempting to justify him and others' actions. I was not made aware of his jokes about consent and his recent behavior involving Chris until only recently, and it left my stomach in knots. I please ask above all else for my privacy to be respected. I don't wish to publicly defend my personal experience and just wish to share my experience.
This concludes the accuser's initial statement on Incident 2. This was the focal point of most of our investigation, because we actually had something to look at.
Start running now, ladies and gentlemen, because Equestrian LA, AC Race Fest, I'm gonna vlog it. I'm going to video log it.
This is AC Race Best, host and creator of Bronies React, and notable friend of Saberspark, at the time at least. He went to EQLA that year in Anaheim, California, and vlogged the whole thing. The vlogs are actually still up on his channel, but they've also been combined and re-uploaded in a corrected aspect ratio by deleted Brony video archives. It's shitty 2012, like 140p hand cam quality.
Little tidbit, I'm about to get a new video camera, so the formatting on this one's a little bit off. As you're noticing, you see these black walls all over.
But there is film evidence that we can look at for this one. And yes, we did archive it. Also relevant, this is the calendar of November 2012. The convention was meant to happen over the weekend, the 3rd and 4th, Saturday and Sunday, technically speaking. Technically speaking, AC starts recording on the night of the 1st.
Now, you ask yourselves, why is he putting this up today? This is a, well, whenever I get this up, but I'm filming this on a Thursday.
Ray's Halloween was yesterday.
Saberspark is also talked about in this footage.
I'm going to see if I can sneak up on Everfree Radio's Final Draft, Dusty Cat, and Saberspark. We found Saberspark, Dusty, and Final Draft on my phone, and they were already gone and back at their hotel.
AC also talks about attending the premiere of Wreck-It Ralph, likely referring to a midnight screening where it first aired in most locations, on November 2nd, 2012.
Let's walk.
Folks, I just came out of seeing the movie Wreck-It Ralph. I know this isn't pony related in any way. What time is it?
2:20.
2:20 in the morning.
He doesn't manage to find Saberspark here, but it's quite clear that Saberspark and the others have at least arrived in the area. Now, one thing that a lot of people have noticed is that Emily has said the second attack allegedly happened on the 2nd, the day before the convention proper. However, both parties did arrive early. So, let's talk about the second. We will go through this day beat by beat with what information we have. The hotel was apparently the Anaheim Hilton, which provided discounts to the con-goers. It was also basically across the street from the local Disney park, and that's where Saberspark and company spent most of their day.
On the list of bad ideas, here comes the first one, setting up my camera. This camera's not gonna stay. It's not gonna stay. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday! The Friday before Equestria LA. One day, less than 24 hours before the convention begins.
AC Race Best drives to the place alone and meets Saberspark there. This is sometime after 4:45 p.m.
Traffic! Well, not too bad. It's 4:46, and things have actually been moving pretty good on this freeway so far, so...
Now, at a point, Saberspark mentions that his cell phone dies.
Saber, your phone died? Why would it do that?
Plugged it in last night.
Oh.
It only charged for like 30 seconds.
He tweets again later that night. Now, this kind of breaks the timeline a bit, but I do think that we need to skip forward a little and establish something immediately, because this thing threw everyone off. Saberspark's tweet here looks like it was made at November 3rd, at almost 1 in the morning. Now, Emily alleged that the incident happened after 10 p.m., like shortly after 10 p.m., and she alleged that Saberspark texted her to get her to go down into the hotel's basement. Now, that is a wild time discrepancy of 3 hours where Saberspark's cell phone was apparently dead. This is what KP is referring to when she says this, by the way.
None of like the things that have been pointed out to me doesn't make any sense. The timeline is questionable.
And I'll admit that at this time, we had at least heard some version of Emily's controversies, and with this apparent discrepancy, it was not looking good for her. However, Phineas let us all in on something that we all should have figured out a lot sooner. Time zones, you idiots. The time that a tweet is posted shows your local time, not the local time of the sender. So I went into my computer settings, changed it to Anaheim's local time, Pacific United States, and look at that, Saberspark sent this tweet out at 9:59 p.m., his time, November 2nd. This doesn't automatically mean that Emily's allegation is true. The only thing that it means is that there is no obvious contradiction when Emily says that Saberspark texted her, because at 10 p.m., his phone was charged, and he was tweeting. I also must let it be known that Emily did not change her story when confronted on this mistaken discrepancy. She did not change her story, even when we were telling her that the story was likely impossible. Everything else that happens at Disney isn't important at the moment. Saberspark and AC carpool together as they drive away, and luckily for us, the camera does occasionally hit the car's clock. The problem is that it's shitty 2012 hand cam by someone just casually recording at night. Here's the best quality images that we were able to get. We believe that this is roughly 9:20 and we asked a dozen people. However, if you don't agree with us, I don't blame you. If that's not enough, after driving for a brief time, AC Racebest is walking with a camera when it hits the moon. It's fairly low in the sky, and moonrise in Anaheim, California on November 2nd, 2012 was roughly around 9 p.m., passing the meridian around 3 a.m. And this is very clearly not moonset, which would have been the next morning. Emily alleges the attack happened at sometime around after 10 p.m. So, what appears to be roughly after 9, the group gets food somewhere, and Saberspark is seen and heard on camera walking with them.
Really fat Tyrannosaurus Rex that didn't stop eating.
What if they were smart and they tried to stop the comet, but they failed? There's like a dinosaur version of Bruce Willis.
So what are we doing right now, Saber?
We're going to go meet up with, I think, food.
We can't tell the exact location because this camera came from the depths of hell, but they pass by a logo that looks like this, and the interior of the place they're at looks like this. Now, Dusty Cat was tweeting at this location, so it clearly did have some form of Wi-Fi, and the woman that he's filmed with does appear in the photo on his Twitter to this day. This tweet was posted shortly after midnight. Time zones accounted for. However, one thing that has to be noted, Saberspark is not filmed at this location at all. If he was there, he's simply not on camera. We don't see him, we don't hear him. When the camera cuts forward again to after 2 in the morning, AC is driving in his car alone, which means that Saberspark needed to find another way back to the hotel. He may have gotten a ride with someone else, it might have been close enough for him to walk to the hotel, we don't know. It should also be noted that places with Wi-Fi, such as McDonald's or outside bars, they don't often give customers the ability to charge their electronics. because people would be there all day and the business owners don't want that, and it would drive the electric bill up. So Saberspark would have needed to find some way to charge this phone before 10 p.m. Now, some places like theme parks do sell portable chargers. However, Saberspark specifically tweeted at 10 p.m. that his phone had come back alive at that specific time. And while we see many people using their electronics, we see no one charging their electronics, especially since this whole place appears to be outside. Another thing of note, we don't exactly see people eating here, which means that this was likely a very confusing cut where AC Race Best jumped forward in time with a lot of missing context. So, where does all of this leave us? It means that as far as I can tell, Saberspark was filmed up to about 10 p.m., but if he was filmed after that, AC Race Best didn't put it in the vlog, which I gotta say is quite frustrating. But what does it mean for real? It means, at the very least, with what we have publicly available, it is not impossible for things to have occurred the way that Emily does describe them. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that it happened, just that, with what we know, it's not impossible. Remember, the incident allegedly happened at the hotel. It allegedly started in the elevator and allegedly ended in a men's public restroom in the basement. Once again, areas that don't really have cameras. The logical question is to ask if there's any missing footage here at all, but this is a vlog from 13 years ago, and considering its quality, I don't exactly know how usable it would be. I'm sure that some people are going to find the fact that Saberspark isn't filmed after 10 p.m. suspicious, and I'm sure that other people will find Saberspark being out and about at 9 p.m. suspicious in the other direction. I'll recap what we can actually see and what we do know. Saberspark's phone was charged at 10 p.m. and he was able to get Wi-Fi at that time. He was able to tweet. On camera, sometime after 9 p.m., he says that the group is going to meet up with food. Wherever they went to get food likely wasn't the place that the camera cut forward to. It could have been another restaurant, or it could have been the hotel itself. I can call the timeline tight, and I definitely will call the gaps in the timeline frustrating, at no fault of either Saberspark or Emily, or even AC Race Best, because I doubt he was expecting this to be used as evidence a decade later. But unlike KP, I can't call the timeline quote-unquote questionable with the facts that are on the table. And speaking of that, I do want to give my final thoughts on this threat, and it is a threat.
So, make a decision soon, or I will publicly confirm it was you. You have 24 hours.
Even when we believed that Saber's phone was dead until 1 in the morning, hours after Emily said that she was texted, and at the same time we believed her to be not of sound mind, do you know what my team didn't do? We didn't threaten her. We did confront her, but we didn't do any of this cloak and dagger shit. There is no excuse for this. I'll state on the record that very few of my team believed Emily the entire time. And when all is said and done, some of them still don't. Some of them do believe her, as you can tell in the interview, but some of them do not. Here is the crux of the matter. Could Emily Jones have specifically scoured through all of this footage and come up with the absolute perfect timeline to create something impossible to tell the objective truth of the matter? Yes, that is a possibility. All of the information we had was public in some shape or form. Can I objectively state that Emily Jones was lying? No, I can't. The reality is that there are only 2 people on Earth who truly know if this happened or it didn't, at least with all of the evidence that is currently available. It sucks, but that's unfortunately the reality of most alleged crimes. And lying isn't even the only possibility. Emily may have been manipulated by bad actors into thinking a certain way about certain events, and she also may have given herself a new perspective on old events in hindsight. Can I say that she's doing that objectively? No, I can't. And I know that's going to be disappointing for a lot of people who are looking into this and want an objective answer. But for this one specifically, you're going to have to use your own discretion to truly determine what you believe. My goal here was not to prove something one way or another, because from the start, we knew that it was likely impossible. Our goal was to detach serious matters from someone who wasn't treating it as seriously as she should have been. Here is what I'll say as a verdict on this. With the publicly available evidence, it's not impossible. That doesn't mean that it happened, it just means that it could have possibly happened. And I keep saying the publicly available answer because there is always the possibility that either the parties are withholding things. I can also say that Emily Jones is a real person who at the very least does have something to lose if she was a proven liar. Regardless of the initial anonymity, she's out in the open now. She's not the figment of the imaginations of Brony Fandot and KP. Remember, Saberspark spent much of his own response video talking about Brony Fandot and KP. Like, he didn't bring up any of this timeline stuff. And on one level, I can see why he did it. It makes his argument less convincing, but at the same time, I can see why it would be a bad idea to establish that he was at these locations at all. But there was something else that crossed my mind when I actually watched through the footage. Because a lot of these vlogs make Saberspark's response video strange in a new way, and we're going to go over that next. Chapter 5, it's called Creeper Fever. One thing that confused me about Saberspark's response video is that he didn't seem to bring up any evidence about the assault allegations specifically. Granted, he didn't have to because there was no evidence directly against him. However, the Disney vlogs do exist, and they're very compelling to this whole case. The videos are still up on AC RaceBest's channel. It begs the question, why wasn't this mentioned at all? Even if it's not a perfect alibi, he could just say, I was at Disney the whole day. It'd give a wide swath of the audience enough of a reason to doubt the accusations on merit alone. On top of that, for much of the day, Saberspark was with people, one of which was recording. There may still exist footage that was not used in the vlogs. I doubt it, but it is possible. Like, it's not a perfect alibi, but there is clearly ammo here that he left on the table. I can't say why Saberspark didn't use any of this, but I might have a guess.
She's a born oh my gosh.
So tell us more about your hair, Michelle.
My hair is also perceived as a ferocious beast.
This is Michelle Creeper. If that name sounds familiar, she was the voice actress for Apple Bloom in Friendship is Magic. She was born September 7th, 1999. So on November 2nd, 2012, she had recently turned 13 years old. Michelle Creeper's parents are mentioned in the vlogs.
Know as well that Mando Pony and the Creepers were also hanging out there yesterday, so we might, who knows, we might see some cameos by some people.
But they don't seem to appear much on camera. However, someone else does. This man here. He walks in, and it literally looks like he's about to give Michelle a hug, and then they walk in tandem. This is not Saberspark. The shirt's different, and he's wearing a hat, but it's not Michael, Michelle's father, and he's not in the group photo that Saberspark took of the event. But he is in the vlogs, spending much of the day with Saberspark and the Everfree Radio cast, as well as Michelle Creeper, this 13-year-old girl that he is not related to. So, who is this man?
Saber, give me a you're watching Everfree Network. You're watching Everfree Network!
This is Mando Pony, making very gross comments that you shouldn't be making about any 13-year-old.
Yes. You now have the Creeper fever.
Oh, I've had the Creeper fever. I've had the Creeper fever. It's just now I'm contaminated.
Creeper facts. Michelle infects everyone.
How does that make you feel, good sir?
And so does Monique. And so does Michael.
Monique and Michael are the names of Michelle's parents.
So tell us more about your hair, Michelle.
This is all very, very creepy. Some people might argue that these comments aren't a big deal. Like, we're seeing more than is actually there. But I have to ask you this question if you think that way. What the hell do a bunch of guys in their early to mid-20s have in common with a 13-year-old girl that they're not even related to? Yes, she was an actress, a celebrity, and yes, they're probably all fans of hers. But, like, there's a difference between meeting a person like that at a convention and, well, just hanging out with them for the day. And it looks like the whole Everfree Radio cast is just spending time taking it all in nonchalantly. It should also be noted that while I was looking for the video where they're on the River Rapids ride and Mando Pony actually announces who he was, I learned that it seemed like both Michelle and Mando Pony had appearances on the Everfree Radio channel.
And yeah, I think it's awesome. This is my first encounter truly with the Creepers.
Yeah.
I got a hug.
Nice. You got a
from
hug.
all of them, even Dad.
Even the dad.
Yes.
They're like the sweetest, most awesome thing.
I can tell.
Dude, She was a 13-year-old girl, not a Disney mascot. Yes, she was a celebrity. I can't imagine any time where this would have been appropriate. Like, people made fucked up jokes about children back in the early 2010s on the internet, but as you can clearly see from the footage, this is not the internet. This is out in public. And the whole Everfree Radio group, at the very least, doesn't seem to be off-put by any of this. Now, Mando Pony, if you don't know, in 2020 was accused of having inappropriate conversations with minors, cheating on his wife, among other things.
Because once you hear the important stuff, it's pretty easy to see that this is basically undeniable evidence that Andy both sent and solicited nude photos from this girl. The first one contains a straight-up admission that Andy wanted to, do Kaylee, followed by a completely unsolicited photo of his bare ass. Another screenshot, one of the most damning, contains a snippet of a conversation in which Andy straight up asks her for a nude photo, followed by him immediately telling her to keep it secret, and that Andy doesn't want anyone finding out about him sending her inappropriate photos. And even worse, in the next screenshot after that, he says, "It's probably wrong of me to be attracted to you, but I can't help it, as long as it's kept quiet and as long as you're comfortable. Is that okay? And it won't progress beyond just flirt/lewd moments." XD been having marital issues, and that while he apparently still loved her, he hadn't been intimate with her in over a year and felt as though their connection was growing weaker, which of course is a completely reasonable justification for cheating on your wife with a high schooler.
While there was apparently an investigation that didn't lead to any sort of conviction, pretty much all of his associations distanced themselves from him, and his fan base this day and age is largely non-existent. I probably would have created some distance too if someone I knew was making jokes about a 13-year-old girl infecting people. Mando Pony would have been around 24 at the time of this footage, if you're wondering. So, this is weird. I think that most people would consider it weird. But I will state, there is no real evidence to how much Saberspark or any of the Everfree Radio people had to any of this. We don't know what anyone in the group was thinking, Saberspark included. All I can say is that I personally wouldn't be caught dead around whatever the fuck is going on around here. At the very least, this is all incredibly weird. However, it does seem to be part and parcel of the bizarre environment that Michelle specifically, and many other child stars have grown up in. You've probably been expecting me to talk about the Black Griffin stuff for this whole video. I have mentioned him a couple of times, as it is the one controversy that seems to have stuck to Saberspark's reputation. The thing that people seem to be aware of this day and age is that Gabriel C. Brown, stage name Black Griffin, has been accused of meeting his now wife Claire when she was 14 years old. They got married when she was an adult, and ever since then, this has been the target of suspicion and rumors, namely that people are alleging that Gabe groomed his wife. Saberspark himself stepped in and said that the relationship was weird but above board, basically, and it's known that he was at the wedding of Claire and Gabe. Now, I need to pick and choose my words very carefully here. Claire claims that she is not groomed. Michelle also vouches that nothing weird happened and that everything was essentially above board. If you've been paying attention to the KP story at all, Beckett from the channel Cope and Seethe actually got both of them on interview for them to give their side of the story of this whole thing. I do think that if you're concerned at all with the Black Griffin story, it is worth at least hearing them out. Also, so there's absolutely no confusion on the context of this, this is not a collaboration project. Beckett and my team did talk with each other and we exchanged evidence, but each of us independently had our own investigation. We reached out to separate people, had different approaches, that kind of thing. But I do see the videos as companion pieces, which is why I keep bringing up his video. Also, small detail, Claire is not Michelle. And the most weird shit I hear about seems to occur around Michelle and not Claire. And it's Michelle getting these weird interactions with Mando Pony. Now, I do know the counterpoints here. These girls grew up in a bizarre environment. There's clear footage of that here. It looks like Michelle is going in to greet this man who is not related to her with what appears to be a hug. This woman here, might be Monique Krieber, but, this is the closest time to seeing either of Michelle's parents anywhere in this footage. I've combed through it, and besides this one cameo, I can't seem to find them. As Mando Pony takes Michelle around Disney, a man who years later was accused of using secret social media accounts to groom young girls. They clearly did not have a normal childhood, and things were normalized that clearly should not have been. There's also the argument that when grooming is successful, the alleged victim will claim to not be a victim. That is the goal of the activity, to make victims not feel like victims. There are plenty of stories where people who will defend those who have victimized them, not just in cases of grooming, but in examples of, say, abusive relationships. We've all at least heard of the story of someone who has stayed with a violent partner because of any number of excuses. Here is the reality. Even if the worst of the worst happened, Claire and Michelle are adults now. Even if the worst of the worst has happened, they have the final call and decision about what happens to them, especially without super concrete proof. And I use the word proof intentionally. There is evidence that things are weird, but we still don't have a smoking gun, as it were. And I will be honest, most of the evidence in regards to Gabe and Claire is circumstantial. And, for the sake of argument, even if the worst of the worst happened, harassing Claire especially to quote-unquote get her out of her brainwashing is not going to solve jack shit. It's really not. And some weird internet rando is not going to change her mind after a long series of decisions supported by her environment and her circle of peers. Especially when the standard bearer of the accusations comes from people like Brony Fandon't. Now, back to the matter at hand. Saberspark was within his right to defend Black Griffin. That is his right. Am I saying that he is right to do so, though? In my opinion, no. I want to get the order of events as right as possible. The relationship between Gabe and Claire starts publicly, and then people get speculative. Saberspark steps in, and he defends them. After this, there are a bunch of other allegations against Black Griffin. The Google Doc is written, and videos are made on Black Griffin. And if Saberspark stayed entirely quiet, to some extent I would understand that. We probably wouldn't be talking about this at all. However, in his response video, he does muster up at least the barest level of defense for both Black Griffin and Billy Bustup.
And launch vicious harassment campaigns against multiple online creators, such as Billy Bustup, Prince Whateverer, and Black Griffin.
Billy Bustup is an in-development indie game that is being targeted because they have refused to fire Black Griffin. Now, my team and I actually went through the Black Griffin Google document as thoroughly as we could. And I will say immediately, the most damning allegations are, well, without evidence. Destiny even states that she doesn't have evidence. Now, whether or not you or I believe the allegations, look at where we are currently. There is certainly a lot of allegations, but quantity of allegations does not improve quality of allegations. I'll be as blunt as I can. The Google document comes across as a gish gallop, a rhetorical technique where you try to overwhelm your opponent with a bunch of arguments, where the focus is not to win the argument, but make the arguments impossible to respond to. Now, let me be as clear as I can. Defending Black Griffin still affects my opinion of Saberspark's character in the present day, and I'll tell you why. The most damning stuff is accusations that are technically without evidence. However, there are things that do stand that are clear-cut, like the DeviantArt comments, where Black Griffin was flirtatious with a minor who had their age in the profile. And in many of the videos and many of the tweets, he is saying creepy shit with minors present. And then there's this video where he's, doing things with Michelle Krieber. Once again, this underage girl that he's not related to.
The concert concert! Part 2 is the reception where we get to say hi to performers and get signed CDs and photographs. Oh my gosh! Part 3
Learning all of us from a marvelous turkey dinner.
Y'all better be buying some tickets because I need to get myself some new product.
If you want to expand your day, you can opt into other events, such as a comedy workshop with Saber and Race and us.
I can't judge the intention or the effect on those around him, and I can't say that he's a criminal, but I can say that he is creepy. Very creepy.
Where's me in all of this, huh?
You're not powerful.
I have a horn.
So do I, but I can't do anything with it.
Keep it in your hand.
And I could say that making any comments like that, and I could say that watching any of this footage just makes me really, really concerned. I personally would not be defending this man, even if all those other allegations are false. Saberspark has every right to defend this man. He may even personally believe that Gabriel did not groom Claire. He may even be right. We really don't know. I can't even say that he knew or believed of the additional stuff like the weird as hell comments in the DeviantArt messages. But in that case, it would be a level of negligence to not know that while defending someone. Even if you have a problem with the source, you should at least know what all the claims are. To be as fair as I can, what Saberspark literally does in his response video is just say that Black Griffin is a content creator being harassed by Brony Fandon't. But he does not state what that reason might be, essentially downplaying the level of the scenario. It's fine if you believe that Black Griffin doesn't deserve to be harassed. And I reiterate, don't harass anyone, it's not going to solve anything. But I also believe that it's important to know why he's being harassed. And all of these comments that he's made are attached to that. And whether or not Saberspark actually knew about any of these comments, any defense of Black Griffin, especially now, are attached to these comments. Even the most minor of defenses. And it's not like Saberspark or his team is above looking into dark stories, as much of his content is about hard-hitting pieces on dark subject matter and dark characters. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that I find the timing of Saberspark's retirement message convenient. This is my own personal opinion and it does not mean anything objectively, but throughout the spring of this year, the Black Griffin fires got a lot higher. The Google document is released and 2 videos on the man are released that get some level of mainstream attention. Regardless of their quality and the standard bearers, the story is getting mainstream attention, and many people are publicly distancing themselves from Gabe. In the midst of all of this, Saberspark, in the month of April, lets it out that he's only got like 2 years of video making in him left, and is planning on retiring to start an animation studio. In my personal opinion, I find the timing interesting. Especially because Saberspark, outside of his ever-free radio friends, doesn't seem to have sown much goodwill with the cartoon community. Even ignoring KP, you might not believe this, but a lot of people in this niche, who do what I do not like Saberspark as a content creator. I won't name names because no one wants to be in any part of this drama, but a wide swath of content creators find Saberspark to be a negative influence in our niche. Speaking of the Black Griffin thing, there is the thing making content about predators in the animation industry while defending someone who is allegedly a groomer, or in some cases just not being open about everything you do know. That can be considered a level of hypocrisy. But even that is not what I'm talking about as to why many cartoon reviewers do not like Saberspark. I'll tell you what the big problem is. One day this guy will be talking about My Little Pony. He spearheaded Sleepy Time Reanimated, a project revolving around Bluey, a show for preschoolers. Adults watch both of them, but they're shows aimed at very young children. Then, on another day, Saberspark will be reviewing literal animated porn. Like, not just adult cartoons, but literal X-rated films. He finds out that no matter how hard you censor porn, you can't put it on YouTube, and so he literally uploads it to Pornhub.
It'll be on Patreon, Newgrounds, and Pornhub. Because, why the hell not?
Then he tries to link it in the description of a YouTube video, but he learns that that's also TOS. You can't link to porn either in YouTube. Doing stuff like this is how you alienate yourself from a community. His thumbnails can be so risque that they look like they come from 2008, where people just put boobs on screen and call it a day. And the man finds sex so funny or fascinating, or I don't even know, that all he can think about when looking at the stupid innocent McDonald's ad, he's going on about breeding.
For me, for some reason, I can really go for a cheeseburger right about now. With a side of breeding, too.
I get that the joke of much of his content is quote-unquote porn. It's not a funny joke, especially in this medium. Yes, adults watch animated content, and they watch videos about animated content. But we also have to realize that 13-year-olds also watch animated content, and they watch content about animation. Saberspark goes on to complain that YouTube is putting pornographic ads on his content. Geez, I wonder why. Here's a little tip for you. You can manually turn that off. Like, YouTube gives us options of ad categories that we want to refuse. For instance, I do not allow alcohol and gambling on my channel because addiction is a sore spot for me. But if the porn ads are such a problem, go to channel monetization, watch page ads, ad categories, and here are the ones you want to turn off. You're set. I have problems with Saberspark's character. Does that automatically mean that he's guilty of sexual assault? No. But I think this is relevant, and let me put it this way. Saberspark used a video about his own allegations to say that there was a harassment campaign against Billy Bustup and Black Griffin. And he was so determined to do so that he didn't realize that Billy Bustup is not an online creator. Billy Bustup is a video game that is developed by Giddy Goat Games, which I guess you can call the Billy Bustup team, but Billy Bustup itself is not a content creator. It's like calling Minecraft itself a content creator. And once again, Saberspark himself used the tweet of Brony Fandon't, linking to a Google document that he did not write, as an example of his harassment of Black Griffin. I am fully willing to believe that Brony Fandon't has harassed Black Griffin. The Brony Fandon't account is known to harass people that they believe to be a criminal or believe to be defending criminals. Bonk will likely harass me when he gets out of the hospital. Once again, linking to a Google document is not an example of harassment, especially in a scenario where actual examples were likely easy to find. I do see this portion of the video as an attempt to try and defend Gabriel. In Saberspark's own words, I think taking this time especially to do this speaks to a larger problem. Honestly, it's not even a moral thing. Like, it's a sense of pragmatism. For the sake of argument, let's say that everything levied at Black Griffin is false. All 100% of it, and let's argue that he's the most innocent, perfect man on earth at the brunt of a bizarre, deranged harassment campaign because people want to marry Sweetie Belle online. A good chunk of the public believes that Black Griffin is a groomer, especially before Beckett's video came out, when Saber's response video came out. These people cannot seem to be convinced otherwise. They don't believe the alleged victims, Michelle and Claire, when they say that nothing happened. This campaign has gotten to the point where people are disassociating with Black Griffin publicly, and the people who aren't are getting harassment campaigns of their own. True or false, people believe the worst in Black Griffin. So, when you're the one in the hot seat, defending yourself from sexual assault allegations, even invoking the man's name at all, is just fucking mental. Let me put it this way, in a way that I think everyone can understand. Chris Hansen is a man with a ton of controversies and has lost pretty much all respect in all regards. He's a clown, and he will be for the rest of his life. And you could find this through easily accessible dirt. However, with that being said, if I were trying to defend myself from predator allegations, the last thing on earth I would want to say is that Chris Hansen has been targeting me for a while now. And just detached from all of this, it's weird for Saberspark to still be defending Black Griffin. Here, in all places, this could have possibly been his very last stand. Like, it had to have crossed his mind at some point that this response video had a possibility of not working, a possibility of not turning the tides. With your dying breath, do you really want it to be a defense of Black Griffin? Do you feel that strongly about this man? Especially because, like, detached from morality, even detached from the truth, defending Black Griffin here is a boneheaded move. It reminds people of your biggest controversy prior to this. You can't logic anyone into believing your side on the Black Griffin controversy. And there are so many other points you could have gone to if you wanted to go after Brony Fandunt, such as his associations with Wootmaster. Watch Beckett's video for that. And honestly, defending Black Griffin here, it's not even a good defense for Gabriel. Like, what am I supposed to get out of this? Yeah, this guy who thinks Gabe is a groomer is coming after me, but I'm innocent, so that means Gabriel is innocent too. Like, why? Why any of this? I do think it's important to state the difficult situation that Saberspark is in his response video. He had the task of trying to prove a negative, which you can't do. Like, even with the timeline and everything that we found, he'd still have to recall things from over a decade ago. And even if he could do that correctly, without the gaps in the footage, it'd still just be his own word. And even if he did find the footage, people could say that it was altered or blah blah blah. You can't prove a negative. So I can get why he's kind of reaching for arguments in his response video. Because even if he was totally 100% innocent, you can't exactly prove that you didn't do something. At least in a situation like this, where it really is he said versus she said. However, I have to say, the arguments he's reaching for are weird. Technically speaking, Black Griffin getting harassed by Brony Fandunt doesn't have anything to do with Saberspark. It's a whataboutism argument. Like, think about it. Even if everything against Gabe is false and everything that Saberspark says about Brony Fandunt is true in regards to Gabe, that doesn't automatically mean that Saberspark is innocent. You know what I'm saying? Chapter 6, Proving KP Rep. There's one thing that's of a fairly universal opinion. This is where Bonk, Emily, and KP all agree. We should be focusing on the actual allegations and not the video that was, for all intents and purposes, a complete and utter train wreck. I hope that spending 23 pages of script on them is enough, because I do think this video would be incomplete if we didn't at least talk about the video in question. So here's the events that transpired behind the scenes. In 2015, Aficionados Chris is in a co-ed room with KP at a convention. At some point later, he gets fired and comes up with this joke or story. Most people are telling me that it's a joke, but honestly, I really can't tell, and I'm not taking anyone's word on it. He tells a story where he did something very inappropriate to KP's clothing, and shares the story with other former KP staff. It's worth noting that KP does have a lot of disgruntled former workers. This video was mostly about Saberspark, and I think I made that clear, like, publicly, but when I opened up my DMs, people just kept telling me stuff about KP. Like, a lot of stuff about bad experiences and apparent weird shit she's done. Stuff that's not entirely relevant to the matter at hand. And I'm sure that other people will be telling their stories at some point in the future. But I want to stay focused. In the 2020s, this story finally gets back to Rachel. She confronts him in a call with someone called Riddle of Lightning. This call is allegedly recorded without Chris's knowledge and consent. I will also note that there is a third party here, Riddle of Lightning. He doesn't say anything, so I'm fairly sure his purpose here was just to record. Considering the Star Giant video, you might be expecting me to say a certain thing. I'm not going to say that this is illegal, because I don't know the exact scenario. I'm not even going to say that Chris didn't deserve it. I'm just stating a fact of the matter. Chris was allegedly recorded without his knowledge and consent. KP sends this to Chris's bosses, and seems to be very, very surprised when they don't do anything with this information. Both of the bosses make it somewhat clear that a big problem here is that the recording was taken without Chris's consent. And so KP goes on to make this huge video starting roughly in late 2024. A lot of the video is about her own beef with Chris, but she gets in contact with some of the alleged victims of DA games, and towards the end of March, Emily steps forward to her encouraged by both Brony Fandon't and Amy. Both users of the Brony Fandon't account had direct access to the Emu Emmy Discord account, and KP was talking with it since the very beginning. And neither of them did a background check on her until after the video exploded. KP was told not to put in Emily's allegations. She was told this by Lyle Convoy.
Then that needs to be handled by the cops. Like, period. Like, 100% period. That needs a police report filed today. Here's the problem, though, with that inherently. If that did happen, and Saber did do that, he will by nature know who it is. So if it gets out in any way, shape, or form, and a police report hasn't been filed, she's going to be at risk. Like, that's just the truth of the matter in this. And it's unpleasant, it's ugly, but that's the truth.
KP, of course, didn't seem to listen, as we all know how that story ended. The video was enlisted and then privated soon after, but by that point it was too late. The damage was done. She seemed to really want to get this video to the public, as is. For the entire month of March, they didn't even bother to ask, "Are you sure the dates are correct?" Now, it's known that KP basically asked for a bunch of assets and voice acting from various places. And the common story is that no one had any information about what the video was about at all. From what I could tell, each of the individuals involved had a varying set of knowledge. Like, the guy who voiced the Eggman meme thing, he didn't even know that he was being put in this. Which is weird on the face of it, because that's not even the original meme. It's a cosplayer doing a read-over. No one really knows why KP put that version in the video. I actually had a hard time finding it. I guess maybe because the voice sounds more like Saberspark than the original, I really don't know. Some people only apparently got context of their specific little piece of the video. Like, the disclaimer, for example, probably only got the disclaimer at the start. If you want special insight though, Lazy Bedhead was featured in the video, reading an email. She did seem to get more context than most seem to have gotten, but it was still just random chunks of information. Nobody truly knew how bad the video would have become. Meanwhile, Courtney Pete had more extensive knowledge of the video that seemingly anyone else had, but claims to have not seen the video before it aired, despite featuring in it heavily and berating people in the premiere who did not like it. Very few people had the full context, and I believe people when they say they didn't know X, Y, and Z. But if I have to be absolutely frank, it doesn't exactly absolve everyone of everything. June the King's part of this video especially sticks out to me, because that part specifically does not need context to be bad. Here's what he literally says, and just those lines alone shows you the problem, where it's full of probablys, conflicting and soft language, speculation, and the last thing you'd expect in a June the King video, or any video about serious allegations. It is not something that he should have read on its own merit, never mind the construction of the rest of the video. This is opposed to the email that Lazy read or the disclaimers at the start. Those were largely innocuous. Which reminds me, in the June part, there's this line here.
Chris also tries to steer the conversation to not include too much explicitly, stating that, quote, "there is a baby in the other room," unquote.
This gives the impression that Chris in the video is being quoted literally. He is not. Chris literally says this.
Right.
Part
And
of my PG version, I have a 6-year-old in the other room, so.
So what's the deal here? Chris is using this as an excuse to soften his language and not quote the story literally with all of its grotesque, revolting details. And I want to be clear and upfront. The story is gross and it's a shameful thing that no one should ever really be talking about. Why is this sleight of hand a big deal? Because a 6-year-old and a baby are not the same thing. Now, I will be frank, you should not be talking about this kind of stuff around a baby. But if you do, they're probably not going to remember it. Meanwhile, a 6-year-old is going to be repeating the story to all of their friends the next day at school. Intentionally or not, it changes the dynamic of the excuse. This call was recorded without Chris's knowledge or consent. This is not the first time that KP had done this. The Lily Orchard video, she made that very clear. Now, fuck Lily Orchard, but a lot of other people have also speculated that she has recorded other conversations without consent. I have no proof of this, but considering KP has done it twice now, the speculation is extremely common. Even in cases where this is not illegal, it is bad form. And I'll tell you why. When you record people without consent, simply put, people become hesitant to talk to you at all. Even if you record quote-unquote bad people only. Because then it's your perception of them that they have to worry about, and no one wants that kind of headache because they can't read your mind. It's bad ethics to record even bad people without their consent. In the video, KP states that Chris should have known that the call was being recorded because it was quote-unquote about safety. This is the very same video that has a long segment by Courtney Pete going on and on about how implied consent is not a thing. KP also went on later to state in the DMs with Emily that implied consent is quote-unquote kinda BS. If I need to spell it out for you, KP thought consent to be recorded was implied in this conversation. Consent is more than just about sex, I hope you realize. The entire call itself is about Chris being regretful and remorseful. At no point does he ever say, I didn't do it, you deserved it, you bitch. He's saying all the things that an offended party would want to hear. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, it was wrong, it's disgusting, I'm sorry. He doesn't even bring up that this happened years ago. The only thing that he says in his defense is that he's doing things to get better, like going to therapy. Does Chris deserve to be forgiven? I don't know. That's not my call to make. Does he deserve to be hunted down a decade later by his ex-boss after doing this grotesque, egregious thing and fired from all of his jobs that he currently has? That's not my call either. The only comment I really have on this matter is that the mercy you give to others tends to be the mercy that you get from others. The call itself makes some really confusing points that makes it hard to know where Rachel is coming from exactly. KP appears to believe that Chris is using the story to, fluff himself up with other men. She directly compares it to the Trump-Billy Bush thing, almost as if Saberspark or Will from DA Games were supposed to be, impressed by it.
As analogy is kind of the Trump locker room talk, and excuse my French, but I feel like that's kind of what it feels like. You kind of boast yourself up around another guy, and you kind of...
No, that's 100% accurate. That's a very good analogy, actually. The most I ever see him is at conventions, if he happens to be at the same one.
Okay, so you're not in an environment where this would have come up anyway.
Never.
So he would probably be unaware.
Never. He's 100% unaware. Again, I can't stress enough is that in the times I ever told the story, it was, as you described it, locker room talk with a very small amount of people in a private call. I never told it publicly, and I never, ever told it to anyone like Saberspark.
As a man myself, if you're telling me a story like that in hopes of getting a job, I'm going to tell you to get bent. I don't know how this was even a speculation in Rachel's mind. She may have had a point in 2015 when edgelords dominated the platform, but we're in the 2020s. Influencers tend to be very progressive, at least publicly facing. Even if they're faking their values, anyone telling sexist or racist or transphobic or stories like this is a liability, and nobody wants that. And honestly, KP's video might be a good example as to why. The fact of the matter is that if Rachel's video didn't accuse Saberspark of sexual assault, a lot of people probably would have taken her side against Chris, in spite of the video's tone and construction. After Saberspark's response video came out, some people still did. This conversation was the impetus of a year-long campaign to get Chris fired. And when that didn't happen, KP made a video on the people who wouldn't fire them, over the course of 6 months. And she hypes this up to hell and back, and by March, she's claiming that she has career-ruining allegations against Saberspark. She won't tell anyone exactly what those are, because apparently she wanted to blindside the man. In the video proper, the Black Griffin stuff is like only a footnote, by the way. Courtney gives a brief rundown and basically says, go watch my video on it. Meanwhile, the Black Griffin stuff is the only thing against Saberspark that seems to have publicly stuck. On March 25th of this year, Emily goes forward to Amy, telling her a story about Saberspark. Within 24 hours, Amy has contacted Brony Fandon't, and Emily is telling her story directly to KP. From the beginning, both of these had access to who Emily Jones was, and the ability to look up the controversies revolving around her. KP decided to believe Emily based on testimony matching experiences and quote-unquote seeming to be in character with him. This is not a good standard of evidence. Anyone who knows someone well enough can make up a story about them doing some deranged fuck-up thing that quote-unquote fits with their character. I'll even state for the record, if the allegations weren't out in the open already, I would not be platforming them. Even if you believe them wholeheartedly, it's a risk in every sense of the word. Reputation risk, lawsuit risk, and the risk that you may have been lied to or taken advantage of. It is alright to believe a story, but if you want to platform something, you need evidence, and you need hard evidence, especially when the person you're talking to has an audience of their own, which KP should have known. But let's say that you're just desperate to quote-unquote do something right. Maybe stop a time or two and listen to the advice of those around you. With the exception of the editor of the video, who is uncredited and I'm not interested in unmasking, it's hard to know who saw the video in its entirety beforehand. Besides Emily, I only got 2 objective names of people who were at least shown some version of the video before it was uploaded. Lyle Convoy and Courtney Pete. Lyle Convoy was too busy with real-life business, and the version he was shown anyway was an earlier draft before the Saberspark allegation was put into it. And I reiterate, when he figured out what KP was going to do, he specifically told her not to put it in the video. Meanwhile, Courtney Pete claims that she didn't see the video at all, despite being in it, extensively, multiple times, despite working with Emily and giving feedback to her testimony and having direct sway over it, despite berating people in the comments during the video's premiere. I'm not saying that Courtney Pete is lying. I'm saying 2 separate things. 1, I wouldn't blame anyone who comes to that conclusion of their own accord, and 2, if she is telling the truth, her not watching the video does not absolve her of the blame of the video's quality. Courtney had segments where she took the lead. She was giving behind-the-scenes feedback to Emily. There is one other name of someone who apparently gave KP feedback, Casey. If Casey is to be believed, she knew the video was in production and also told KP to not fucking do this. After the video was unlisted and then privated, KP claimed the tone was broken because she had never made a video like this before. This is a lie. This is objectively a lie. Last year, she had made a video on Lily Orchard with the help of Courtney Pete. I have my issues with that video too. Once again, recording someone without consent, and she also starts with the least compelling argument against Lily Orchard, pretendingism. That can be considered burying the lead. But other than that, the video itself was largely fine. Of course, according to Random Anons, that video was meant to be similar to the Saberspark and DA Games video in tone, but she had to be begged out of it. I'm not sure if I can believe that, since she clearly didn't take any advice for this video. I doubt that advice would have influenced it in the previous case, but this is what people have told me. My only real problem with the Lily Orchard video is when it came out, 2024. That is very, very late in the Lily Orchard timeline. Rachel claims that she was only kicking Lily Orchard to the curb then because of her own triggers. Counterpoint 1. She made a video in part about DA Games, which is tied to a grooming scandal. Counterpoint 2. Lily Orchard's internet story is filled with scandals of a wide variety. Even if Stockholm, Tara Callie, Courtney Pete were all too much, the Josh Scorcher fallout is something that everyone heard about, especially in the Brony community, her community. Between not vetting Emily Jones' backstory at all until after the video was made, and doing an interview with Angry Slug, who doesn't even really have an audience, something is fundamentally wrong here. It's one thing to look past the flaws of your friends and acquaintances. Literally every single person I interact with knows the June the King video on me front to back. Some of them have even been there with me through those controversies. So it's not like the people I interact with are not aware of my flaws. I haven't talked too much about the tone of the video and its actual construction because honestly, it's not even secondary. It's beyond tertiary. There are people saying that you shouldn't have any jokes or humor or anything in a video like this, when I don't think that's quite true. Lacey Bedhead herself has some skits in her videos, and sometimes people do something so objectively stupid and out of left field that there's always going to be humor in it. Like Mama Max thinking that the best way to hunt predators is not contacting the police and instead sending them photographs of his ass. Let me put it this way. I Love Kim Possible a Lot has been having the PFP of She-Go from Kim Possible this entire time as she goes through her villain arc. I wouldn't blame anyone for finding that objectively funny. Anyone who comments on this whole ordeal is going to comment on this line here.
For some reason, people think I'm unqualified to do this.
You know, I think they might have been onto something.
Hello, Slop.
Which has, for all intents and purposes, become mimetic. In a discussion about difficult allegations, you can't be blamed for finding that humorous. That's without even bringing up the fact that the video she uses to quote-unquote disprove her rep is a video that's on her own channel. Putting humor in a video like this is all about the craft and constructing the video well enough to support the humor within it. Keeping in mind tone, and here's what everyone else seems to be missing: flow. There is a prolonged Seinfeld joke, for instance. So this video claims to be about DA Games and SaberSpark. It's actually about Aficionados Chris in the end. You know how none of those names are actually Jerry Seinfeld? So, Jerry Seinfeld dating a 17-year-old. It's gross, it's not something that he should have done, and I can go on and on about that. Why are we wasting all of this time on Jerry Seinfeld, of all people? Why not Jared from Subway? Why not P. Diddy? Why not comment on the Drake controversy? There's 20 million famous alleged sickos in the world. Are any of them relevant at all to the discussion of DA Games, SaberSpark, or Aficionados Chris? No, Jerry Seinfeld is irrelevant. You should not be doing a prolonged Seinfeld bit in a video about them. This gag would probably actually work if you wanted to do like a documentary about Jerry Seinfeld and his controversies. Then it would actually fit. It doesn't fit here. With so many digressions, it becomes so easy to just get lost in the video. I did at one point want to deconstruct this bit by bit, but you really can't. Because when we spend 2 minutes with Eggman pissing on the moon, we literally learn no new information. It just literally reiterates what Rachel just said. The video goes back and forth with these random tangents that have nothing to do with anything. It is one of the biggest slogs of a video that I've ever had to see, and I had to watch this!
My brother would like to punch me whenever I step out of line, most notably for me eating my boogers, because he believed that he was doing something right and making the world a better place, or even making my life a better place. So he is basically a social justice warrior at the age of 5. He did this because some kid in his class got made fun of for picking his nose. And that gave my brother the logic of him wanting to make sure that I didn't do that same mistake. You can blame my brother for why I don't like the right. In politics, that is. I am left-leaning, for the record. Liberal.
And even after that, I could not comprehend what Rachel was saying. But I actually do want to talk more about Eggman pissing on the moon specifically. Because this joke here actually happens to be relevant and speaks to a larger problem.
I've come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog is a bitch-ass motherfucker. He pissed on my fucking wife. That's right. He said his dick was this big, and I said, that's disgusting.
So, this is a fan dub of a fan dub. The original clip comes from Sonic Adventure. Then, this guy here made a meme of it.
So I'm making a call-out post on my Twitter.com. Shadow the Hedgehog, you got a small dick. It's the size of this walnut, except way smaller. And guess what? Here's what my dong looks like.
A cosplayer did a rendition of that.
That's right, baby! All points! No quills! No pillows! Look at that! It looks like 2 balls and a bong!
And KP took it and put it in her video without crediting the guy or contacting him at all. That alone is bad enough. But if you are remotely familiar with the Emily Jones lore, this meme becomes something else entirely. Emily Jones was accused of not paying the voice actor of Eggman, Mike Pollock. And Emily Jones has a documented history of being harassed by disgruntled Sonic fans. Like, specifically for this. And you use an Eggman meme as the voice of the man who your video claims committed sexual assault against Emily Jones. If you believe Emily Jones' story, that is 7 levels of fucked up. And if you don't believe Emily Jones, this whole thing is like 20 levels of fucked up. Looking into someone is more than just trying to prove them a liar, you know. It's trying to give their story the best chance it has at being objectively vetted. And you know, not accidentally doing something horrendously insensitive. Chapter 7. Final Thoughts. Trust but verify. That is the slogan that's been used quite a while now. Back in the mid-2010s, there was a groundswell of people going straight in and believing all victims and taking all of their stories at face value. Unfortunately, since then, we've had so many stories where the reality was initially a lot more complicated than once thought. Pro Jared and Quite are the names that come up a lot when we talk about things like this. And on some level, and in some communities, we seem to be at the other end of the spectrum, where if there's no die-hard evidence, the accuser must absolutely be lying. To the point where someone stepping up without an airtight case will get bashed and harassed to the nth degree. The problem is that so many cases, most of them, are in the gray area, especially in cases of sexual assault, where perception is a large component of what constitutes the crime. It's hard to prove or disprove what someone was thinking, but what someone was thinking of is a core tenet of when something goes too far. It must be stated once again that innocent until proven guilty is for both the accuser and the accused. The only thing that I could really do in this video is lay all of the findings on the table. If you believe Emily Jones, if you believe Saberspark, or if you don't believe anyone, that's your prerogative. Just remember that you can't legally state what you can't prove, or you may be in just as much trouble as I believe KP will be in. And I'll state, I believe that she is in serious trouble for what she did, no matter what the truth of the matter is. Either the allegations are true and she botched investigation beyond all belief, or they're false, and she elevated a horrendous controversy against, for all intents and purposes, an innocent man. I personally believe that she will get sued for defamation by Saberspark. It really is only a question of how merciful that he wants to be at this point. Whatever you believe, even if you believe the worst of someone, I personally believe that it's no reason to harass anyone, even if whoever you're doing to is the worst person imaginable. When you harass something, there are 3 general scenarios. Number 1, you might be harassing someone who doesn't deserve it at all. Number 2, you may be goading someone unstable into doing something unstable. Or 3, you may actively be putting yourself in danger by pissing someone off who is legitimately dangerous. And while you're doing this, you're blurring the lines of the truth and making it harder to get to its source. Let me put it this way. One of the things that Saberspark is accused of is going out of his way to harass Claire's father online. I'm willing to believe that Ian Corlett is the worst person in this entire story. I've heard the recordings, and they're not pretty. I will state for the record that Ian Corlett is a douchebag. I can believe that he is a person with a character who is worth harassing. That being said, who did Saberspark allegedly harassing him benefit? It didn't sway anyone's opinion on the Claire Corlett Black Griffin matter. It didn't stop Ian from doing anything that he was doing. The only effect it actually had in the real world was making Saberspark look even more biased in the Black Griffin scandal. There is no legitimate reason to harass anyone. So, what's the lesson here? The lesson is to go to the police. I know that we live in an ACAB time, and a lot of people aren't too fond of the cops, especially here in the United States. Go to the police as your first option. Seriously. The sooner, the better. The police will be harsh. They will criticize your story. And yes, they will even try to catch you in their lies. They may even actively disbelieve you. But, for better or worse, the police system is the only ones with proper authority to get you justice. Because all of that I walked you through, all of the videos and all of the background on this, all of this shit, true or not, it's not justice no matter what the fuck happened. All of this is a clusterfuck. If you have 10 hours or, hell, 10 days, I could go over all of the controversies that YouTuber vigilantes have created over the years. Look really hard into Mama Max. EDP tried to meet up with a 14-year-old girl for a quote-unquote cupcake. And he got away with one of the most clear-cut cases imaginable, because the people who tried to sting him were focused on content instead of justice. Honestly, it's not even just tied to YouTube in general. It's To Catch a Predator, Chris Hansen's show, ended up getting a guy killed. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that if you're trying to do the hero thing, getting someone killed is a very real possibility. Assuming that Brony Fandom wasn't faking, look what almost happened here. The last person that you should ever go to looking for justice is a YouTuber. Says the YouTuber. Look, if you like this video and the previous investigations, great! If you think that literally everything I've said in both those videos is airtight, perfect in them, you're naive. I am not a doctor, policeman, lawyer, magician, superhero. I'm not even a journalist. I'm a random guy on the internet who talks about cartoons. And plenty of people don't even think that I'm good at that. Rachel was a random woman on the internet who talks about cartoons. And she wanted to bring very serious allegations to light. If it sounds ridiculous, It's because it's ridiculous. And I will state, it's not like I'm not aware with the various problems with our justice system. It's harsh, it can be unfair and biased, and in some ways going through it can be traumatic. If Emily did go to the court system, you'd better believe that Saber Spark's attorney would be bringing up all of her dirty laundry. And even beyond that, sometimes justice still isn't served. A lot of people still believe all kinds of things about Mando Pony, even though, as far as I can tell, nothing came of the criminal investigation against him. And you hear plenty of people saying that there's really compelling evidence against him. On the other end of the spectrum, the Innocence Project finds new people who are falsely convicted year after year. This does not mean that our justice system is pointless or it should be avoided. It means that it's a part of our imperfect reality. Sometimes, unfortunately, you get the short straw. But you have to remember, sometimes you don't. And since we've survived so long as a country, there must be something to our institutions. If the police are too intimidating, there are plenty of separate organizations depending on your particular issue. RAIN is the recommended resource in terms of cases of sexual assault, but you'll have to do your own research based on your own specific dilemma. But I can promise you, for pretty much any issue, there are resources out there. I can get the temptation to go to YouTubers. On the face of it, they appear friendlier. They appear more understanding, and we have the appearance of having our shit together. We don't have our shit together. We do not have our shit together. I'm not saying that we're bad people. I mean, some YouTubers are bad people, but in general, we're not bad people. We can be very understanding. We can even want to help, but we can't help. And I mean this in a literal sense. Let's say that I could prove this case 100% without a doubt either way. Does that get someone arrested? No. Only the accuser going to the police can do that. I don't have the power to put someone behind bars. And YouTubers can't even really keep you safe. We can't protect your reputation. And some of us can't even properly keep you anonymous. I can't begin to tell you how much of this whole endeavor was simply me staving off a mental breakdown of my own. Things suck. And that's really the only thing that I can objectively state. Things suck right now. And police reform is a very real issue. As for this issue, when it comes to Saber Spark or Black Griffin or Aficionados Chris even, we may never really get to the heart of the truth. And I will state it again, make sure it gets beaten into everyone's head. All parties are to be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. All parties. And I'm not just saying that so I don't get sued. Like, here's a big surprise that some YouTubers learned the hard way. Shielding your language in allegedlys isn't the foolproof defense that some people seem to think it is. You can still get sued if you say allegedly after every single word, especially if you're negligent. I keep saying innocent until proven guilty in a court of law because that is my standard of justice. I have my own personal opinions on everyone in this clusterfuck, and I will say that very few of them are positive. I am not going to objectively state what I believe about Emily Jones or Saber Spark or whatever on the record, because it is not my place. It's not even really my place to say what I believe about KP and her motivations on this whole thing. I can say that it looks really, really bad for her, and I can go over everything she's done. I can say that I doubt that she'll ever have any kind of career on the platform again. But can I say that she did all of this out of a vendetta or malice, as some people seem to think? I can't say that objectively. If nothing else, this should be used as an example. This is an example of every possible thing that could go wrong when justice is not practiced correctly. I could repeat myself on every single misstep. All the way back in 2012 when a police report was not filed when the crime allegedly happened. All the way up to 2025, May, when KP literally sent a threat to the person that she platformed about said alleged crime. But I think I've made the issues clear from start to finish. Like, the only thing that I really can say after 30 pages of script is, I'm sorry. None of this should have gone the way that it did. And it went down in a way where literally no one is happy with it. And unfortunately, I also feel that this isn't the end of the story either. See ya next time. I'll probably be taking a little bit of time to decompress. But regular content will resume shortly. I have no idea what regular content even is anymore.